Hey there movie lovers, we're recapping an American sci-fi action movie, Terminator Dark Fate. Spoilers ahead. Welcome to Magician Recaps Explains. Dark Fate starts with a recorded video playing. In it, Sarah Connor is convinced that the world is ending in a few years, but the movie quickly moves into the future, where Sarah has stopped the world from ending, and she is enjoying life with her son, John, on a beach in Livingston, Guatemala. The year is 1998, and Sarah and John are having a near-perfect life, but this life is ruined when a T-800 Terminator suddenly appears. The Terminator points his gun towards a young John and shoots him. Sarah shoots at the killer, but her bullets are no match for his iron body, and unfortunately, John dies, and the Terminator disappears. 22 years later in Mexico City, and a young teenage lovers witness the most significant events of their lives, as a young woman suddenly appears out of a mysterious power surge, falling from beneath a bridge. They rescue her, but they're stopped by a group of police officers who believe that they've drugged the young lady. The young lady, who in actual fact is an advanced soldier sent from the future, beats up the cops and takes the clothes of our lover boy here. Grace the soldier gets on her mission to protect one Danny Ramos at whatever cost. She's been sent from 2042 back to 2020, but to protect Danny against what? Let's find out. Danny appears to be the soul of her family, and lives a pretty quiet life. She gets her brother out of bed and pushes her father to go to the doctor at noon, but before we wander too far, the unfortunate deed happens. Rev 9 Terminator appears from nowhere in the same way of lightning, intense ice, and electrical power surge. Since it's a pretty normal day, Danny resumes her job at an automobile assembling plant with her brother, Diego, who wants to be as popular as Bruno Mars one day. It turns out to be a bad day for Diego, as he discovers that he's been replaced by a machine. Danny then goes to the supervisor and persuade with him, and at the same time, guess who makes an entry into the assembling plant? It's the much-dreaded Rev 9, disguised as her father, and holding an automatic weapon. Before we get on with it, like the video, smash that subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell to join our magical movie family. Grace also arrives just in time to stop the Rev 9 from killing Danny, and she escapes with both Danny and her brother. But things quickly get a little complicated because the Rev 9 splits himself into two. Using his shape-shifting ability, he pursues the trio and eventually catches up to them in nearly an instant, despite Grace's attempts to derail the Terminator with iron bars. He gains on them and tears off their tires. Unfortunately, Diego is killed along with his dream of being Bruno Mars. Just before he dies, as a loving brother begs Grace to care for his sister against all odds with Danny, and Grace now in his grip, the Rev 9 should be able to kill them easily. But suddenly, Sarah Connor appears out of nowhere and temporarily disables the two divided bodies with explosives. While escaping, a distraught Danny has to be taken back home. She just wants her former life back. But that's no longer an option. Grace now explains that Danny's father has also been killed. Remember how the Rev 9 took the skin of her father to attack her at the assembling plant? Well, it turns out that he died immediately after that happened. So Danny and Grace escape with Sarah's truck with Grace mortally stabbed. They arrive at a pharmacy where Grace gets anticonvulsants and a bunch of other medicines. Unfortunately, the injured Grace passes out and Sarah catches up with them immediately. She takes back her truck and helps the unconscious Grace. Sarah joins the team, and together they find a motel to hide. Sarah initially reveals that she's wanted in 50 states, and this also affords Danny to finally have the time to mourn her brother and her dad. She cries that no one will remember that he existed or that no one will even take time to bury his body honorably. Now, while unconscious Grace dreams of a post-apocalyptic world, which is definitely her future, where she and an army of soldiers fight fiery Rev 7s, Grace suffers a deadly stab, and she's picked up by other soldiers before she dies off a few seconds. When she wakes up at gunpoint, Sarah explains that years after the death of her son, John, she got information that showed that more Terminators had appeared in several parts of the timeline, despite being in different locations. Sarah has found an interesting way to find them immediately after they arrive. Sarah further explains that this allows her to kill the Terminators before they become a threat to anybody, except this one. Grace chips in to inform Danny that Skynet and John Connor don't exist in her future, and that this suggests that Sarah successfully destroyed Skynet. And this also brings Cyberdyne to mind, whose defunct state also contributed to the death of Skynet. And there's more bad news. It's not just Danny who's in danger, the entire world. The future of humanity is threatened by an artificial intelligence known as Legion, which is definitely a smart allusion to the Legion in the Bible, and unfortunately this means the Terminators will be countless. Anyway, Legion was originally created for the purpose of war, but all thanks to long evil ways of mankind, this project becomes a replacement. Eventually, Legion would become a threat to all of mankind, and there would be an attempt to neutralize its effects and its growing influence. But again, wrong decision. The people in charge decide to neutralize this menace with a bunch of nuclear weapons. This in turn creates a nuclear holocaust that wipe out all of humanity and the trees and animals, basically all forms of life. The Legion doesn't completely die, but instead creates a global network of dangerous machines, or Terminators, who go in search of human survivors and kill them. The survivors decide to form a rebellion against the Legion and form a group known as the Human Resistance. They're tasked with fighting against the menace of a Legion. Hey there, movie lover, don't get confused. Just note that all of these will happen in the future, and somehow the destiny of Dani is tied to the Human Resistance. And perhaps she's the reason the Legion would lose the war. Grace refuses to reveal Dani's role in all of these, but it only takes a few more events before she spills the beans back to the present. Grace traces all of Sarah's messages to somewhere in Texas. While this could have passed as an all-girls trip, the arrival of the Rev-9 Terminator sort of changed all that. They barely escaped the ferocious middle hands of this beast, and when they arrive at their final location, they're met with more shocking news. Hope you remember the T-800 that killed John at the start of the movie, the one with dark shades and an unrepentant heart. Yeah, he is the one right there. So you already know that Skynet went dead after Sarah rained her revenge on him. But did you ever wonder what happened to all the T-800 soldiers that were sent to kill people? Well, one of them became a father. The T-800 that had killed John so many years back now is different. Before you admit to the impossible nature of that, here's the actual story behind it. So after Skynet became non-functional, most of the T-800 soldiers became useless, and they aimlessly roamed the Earth after its mission for killing John. The T-800 began learning and eventually became self-aware. During all these years, the machine learned to behave like a human being, developing a conscience, and finally adopting a family, a wife, a son, and a dog. He adopts the human name, Carl, and his wife offers sandwiches to the group. It's also nice to see the fine relationship he shares with his son, Mateo, but this doesn't change the fact that he killed John Connor, who was around the same age. Sarah also explains that his actions years back had a damaging effect on her, and to redeem itself, Carl informed Sarah that there are still soldiers out there, and he offers to join in their fight against the Rev-9. Carl says he would join the team and protect Dani with his life. It gives them access to his room filled with weapons, and they also teach Dani how to shoot. Carl goes with them, but not before he says an emotional goodbye to his family, and also urges them to make their escape. Eventually, the Rev-9 finds Carl's house, but by the time he reaches there, everyone's gone, including Carl's family. Now together, the group proceeds to find an EMP, a military-grade electromagnetic pulse, a weapon strong enough to kill the Rev-9. They get it from an old friend of Sarah's, a major in the military. But no place is too far for the Rev-9 to find. After a brief while, the Terminator appears again in a stolen police chopper, and another serious fight ensues. Sarah's old friend, the major, calls for backup from a nearby military base, but this still isn't enough to stop the Rev-9. So eventually, the group escape this Rev-9 in a stolen plane, but they lose something almost as valuable as their lives, as they lose the EMPs that they tried so hard to get. Now in the plane, we finally find the answer we've been looking for, the answer that explains why Dani is such a hot target for the Rev-9. Grace reveals during the flight that Dani would become the founding commander of the Resistance, and this Resistance will eventually be the death of the Legion. This clearly explains why they want her dead by all means. If the leader doesn't survive till the future, then there's a 90% chance that the Resistance will never be, which means that the Legion will easily win the war against humanity. Smart thinking, of course. Grace reveals that it's Dani who saves her life in the future in the ruins. After Judgment Day period, now in the ruins, we see Dani, now a street soldier, beat up 3 men, and mention that this is exactly what Legion wants them to do, to kill themselves. Dani later raises Grace and trains her to become the soldier that she is now. She further explains that Dani turns scavengers into an army of hopeful soldiers. Suddenly the Rev-9 regains his energy, and he makes his way to the plane. Just how powerful is this guy in swift, calculated movements? The Rev-9 subdues Carl temporarily, and this gives Grace, Gara, and Dani an opportunity to escape from the Rev-9. The group escapes with separate parachutes, and they land in the river, which in turn is situated close to a hydroelectric plant. Carl and Grace realize something more interesting to kill the Rev-9. They have to do something that would have an insane effect on the Terminator, perhaps an explosion. The Terminator is forced into a spinning turbine, and this consequently causes an insane explosion that not only critically injures the Rev-9, but also Carl. Unfortunately, it also affects Grace, who's wounded quite badly. But if you thought this fight was over, you're definitely wrong. The Rev-9 in its almost destroyed phase still mortally wounds Sarah, and this means that Dani would have to fight it herself. Well, that sounds like a bit of a joke. So Grace in a motivational sequence urges Dani to tap into her power source. While this would have been great if it happened, Dani's still too weak to fight against the Rev-9. The Terminator quickly overpowers and would kill her. Carl had reactivated itself, recovering from the bombing. So he attacks the Rev-9, stopping it from killing Dani. And this gives the young lady the chance to grab Grace's power source. Now with this power source, Dani stabs the Rev-9, which plants a bomb in it, but right before it blows off, Carl grabs the Rev-9 and jumps off the ledge, blowing the two Terminators to their death. Perfect ending, right? Maybe not, because we also lost Grace, Dani's brother, and her father, as well. Anyways, several years later, we see Dani and Sarah watching a younger Grace, who's 10 years old, at this time playing with her family at a playground. Perhaps we get the ending we deserve. If this duo is able to prevent the death of Grace and also the rise of Legion, however, this would mean they'd have to fight off more Rev-9s, and definitely angrier ones. Just before they drive off, Sarah tells Dani that it's time for her to get ready, which suggests that a new war is about to start. This was a recap and review for Terminator Dark Fate, which was directed by Tim Miller, and produced by James Cameron and David Ellison. It features stars like Linda Hamilton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mackenzie Davis, Natalia Reyes, Gabrielle Luna, and Diego Boneta. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. Also share your thoughts in the comments section.